Cyberpunk reader.
Stray is a popular new video game that puts players in the role of a friendly feline, wandering a neon-gilded futuristic landscape. The featured cyberpunk-inspired city is populated by self-aware robots that have replaced the plague-decimated humans. The city in the game is called Walled City 99, and is based on the Kowloon Walled City, a former high-rise slum located near Hong Kong, in which used to be the densest place on Earth. Kowloon Walled City was noted for being unregulated by both the Chinese and British authorities, so what emerged was a semi-anarchic living space that came to be dominated by triads and drug gangs. Kowloon Walled City has been the inspiration for a number of cyberpunk settings, including the classic Ghost in the Shell. Recently, a Kotaku writer has taken issue with the portrayal of Kowloon Walled City in the game Stray. While the Walled City 99 is not supposed to be Kowloon Walled City, it is, as I mentioned, clearly inspired by such. In the words of the designers themselves, Kowloon Walled City is the perfect playground for a cat. The writer leveled several key critiques against the game and its use of Kowloon Walled City, most of which centered on the erasure of history and Asian people. He grounds his critique in the framework of Orientalism, which has dual meanings. On the one hand, Orientalism refers to the study of so-called Eastern cultures from the perspective of so-called Westerners. Its second meaning follows from the first, as it also refers to the erroneous assumptions and beliefs about the East that permeate Western academia and media. Like many frameworks for the analysis of social relations and culture, Orientalism is not quite precise in its structure and as such is often haphazardly applied by well-meaning armchair sociologists. Many see any representation of Asians or Asian culture in Western media as an example of the negative aspect of Orientalism. The first critique the author makes against the game Stray is that it ignores the violent and sad history of Kowloon Walled City. To quote the author, "The ensuing lawlessness fermented organized crime and opium dens. The triad gangs turned the enclave into the epicenter of Hong Kong's narcotics trade. None of this context is particularly apparent when you explore the dusty streets of Walled City 99. The history of the Walled City is inextricably tied to colonial rivalries, but none of it is represented in Stray." And so he brings up an interesting point. Should it be the game's responsibility to stay true to history, to dive into the strands of human violence that gave rise to the historical moment from which the developers have derived the material for their own world building? However, many game worlds are inspired by real-life places and cultures, but it is rare that they make direct references to all the historical context that gave rise to that place. Of course, some games do this and do so well, for example, Assassin's Creed. But such edutainment only works if it is seamlessly integrated into the game loop, and if the game action occurs during that historical moment. On the other hand, in Stray, Walled City 99 is a completely fictional city, whose shape and contours draw upon Kowloon Walled City, but it has its own fictionalized history and development, one in which humans are completely absent. His second critique focuses on the use of Asian imagery in the absence of Asians, specifically the use of straw rice farmer hats. Without a doubt, as the author mentions, the use of rice hats in American media has been used to mock and even put down Asian people. The writer uses the example of Abercrombie & Fitch, the fashion company who produced t-shirts that featured characters in rice hats that were clearly meant to parody and or mock Asian people. However, it is fallacious to claim that any representation or use of an object related to a certain ethnic stereotype as present in the Western consciousness is necessarily tied to that stereotype. Objects carry meaning only insofar as we project meaning upon them. The use of rice hats in the Stray game may be in the same spirit of thoughtless mockery as the Abercrombie & Fitch t-shirts, but alternatively, in this context of robots co-opting human fashion, it may bestow an altogether new and fresh meaning. As one commentator states, the article itself outlines what could be the in-game explanation to why casa hats could be commonplace outside rice paddies, which is the same reason a lot of people that never touched a baseball hat use baseball caps. Fashion. Casa are not fashionable in modern-day Earth, but this is a fictional setting. Also, these hats are a common trope in the cyberpunk genre, but it's not used to punch down on Eastern culture. If anything, it's a way to denote human culture creeping into Western societies in fictional worlds in which Japanese culture become dominant worldwide. Kind of like how everyone uses baseball caps everywhere, but with farming instead of sports. In this sense, he brings up a good point. As I mentioned earlier, the objects in themselves don't hold meaning. We project that meaning, or these objects represent something that we already have internalized. For many of us, because of the way Casa hats have been used to mock Asians in the West, we view any use of this hat in Western media as a continuation of that degeneration. But this is not always the case. We have to place context into our view. In this case, this game, set in a city that might be an Asian city, we have robots using the Casa hats in a way that is apparently very innocent. In this sense, they are simply copying the fashions or copying the styles they saw their human masters use before they disappeared. This puts a new spin on the Casa hat. Here it represents perhaps power, or the former power of the humans. It represents perhaps prestige, or even fashion, as the commentator says. Be mindful that the use of Casa hats as a form of mockery in Western media is often accompanied by other images or situations that frame this as mockery. The Abercrombie & Fitch t-shirts were clearly jokes meant to sound clever, but were often taken as demeaning. Other images often show Asians wearing these hats, but also with exaggerated stereotypical features. In this case, we have robots wearing these hats, along with other types of hats. And if anything, it represents the former culture milieu that is now still being sustained by the robots. The humans have all but disappeared. There's more than I can say about this, but I think the Kotaku writer is right to be worried are the way certain images of Asia is used in media, and I do understand his trepidation. I think he is right to be concerned about the way Asian aesthetic is used prominently in Western media to signify certain values or ideas, but Asians are themselves absent. We see that in many cases. We saw that in the science fiction TV show Firefly, where Asian culture was used as an aesthetic. The language was used, certain fashion was Asian derived, but you did not have any Asian principles in the show. So I do think he is correct to worry about the way the Asian look is used in the absence of Asians themselves. But I think Stray here has a reason for that. They created a game that imagined a post-human world, and what that post-human world will look like with our robotic analogs trying to adapt our culture. It's an interesting take, and I would like to explore it further, but I would like to know what you think. Is the Kotaku writer right here, or is he going astray? Thank you. Thank you for watching the Cyberpunk Reader. Until next time, and if you enjoyed the content or found it useful or helpful in any way, please like and subscribe, and click the bell if you want to notice next time I upload a video.